earlier that the news yesterday of the passing of Eric Montross. I didn't know he did play-by-play for that long. What was it, 18 years?
Yeah, he's a color. He's actually doing the color.
Color.
For the Tar Heel Network. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty special.
Yeah.
The passing of Eric Montross yesterday. But joining us right now is a friend of the show, and this young man knows a lot about Eric Montross. I think he was instrumental in making sure that he actually came to Chapel Hill. We got Phil Ford joining us right now.
Good morning.
Good morning, Coach.
Hey, Pam, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on, Pam.
You are welcome. It is always a pleasure and an honor to talk to you.
I wish you
it
would
makes
come
my
on the show.
day.
Earl, they came back, couldn't get George Litz, so I guess they got me. Huh?
Matter of fact, that's a good point. Let me call
That's what
George.
they were discussing earlier.
Let's call George.
Matter of fact, we will call George tomorrow.
Yeah.
But PJ, we really want to get you on. I know on a serious tip that you've known Eric since he was in high school. And very instrumental. I use it in Annapolis all the time, and I know this personally. Trying to get him to come to Chapel Hill, even though his father was a basketball player that went to Michigan, and played there. So just talk about him when you first met him, the whole process of trying to get him to come to Chapel Hill.
Well, obviously, by the time that I was starting to recruit Eric, he had become probably the top prospect in the country at that time. We started following him pretty much his junior year in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And you are correct. I think, it's a long time ago. I think his granddad went to Michigan and played ball, and his dad went to Michigan. And I think his mom went to Michigan too.
Yep.
And his dad was a very successful attorney in Indianapolis.
That's right.
Wow.
And of course, Indianapolis, Indiana. So it came down between Michigan, Indiana, and us. And we were just fortunate that he chose us.
Wow.
Well, we're talking with Phil Ford, and we're talking about Eric Montross and the sad news of the passing of Eric yesterday. So Phil, when you just talked about recruiting him, being on the recruiting trail, talk about the difference and the impact that he had immediately when he got to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
Well, he was just one of those special players that was extremely big, but for his size, believe it or not, he was very agile too.
Mm-hmm.
And he was extremely strong. He was a great scorer down on the low post. He was intimidating. I know Coach used to always get upset with referees because, little guys would go in for a layup and run into Eric, and Eric wouldn't move and they'd fall down. But the foul was on them. They bounced off Eric like they had hit a wall. But Big E was he was a very good student, man. Good student athlete. He was really smart. He was very polished, is what I used to always call him. You hear him doing the commentating on the the Carolina basketball games. He really understood the game, and he understood it that he could make everybody understand it. I remember, and that's kind of hard to do. I remember one of the first times I did it, Coach Smith called me in his office after he had watched it and said, I understand everything you said, but I'm not sure if those players' grandmama understood what you meant. So,
Wow.
but Big E could make everybody understand it, and one of the nicest guys that you ever want to meet. I mean, even from the first time I met him as a junior in high school, he was just extremely kind. He was just well-loved in the UNC community. And, I just never heard anybody say anything bad about Big E. He was just a big, nice guy. And I'm telling you, he represented North Carolina as well as anybody's ever represented North Carolina ever. And he's a huge Tar Heel, and he loved being a Tar Heel. He didn't mind telling you.
Awesome. We are talking to the legendary, the great Phil Ford, and we are talking about Eric Montross and sharing memories. So I'm going to go to the memory side because everybody's talks about how nice he was and things like that. But when you think of Eric Montross, Big E, what's one of your favorite memories?
Oh, the '93 championship.
Yeah.
You know, it was, I think Duke had won the title in '91 and '92.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we won it in '93, it was just very rewarding. That was a great team. You know, those guys, I'm not sure if there's ever been a better team. And I mean team, I'm not talking about individual talent. I'm just talking about cohesiveness and everybody understanding what everybody else is going to do. Eric was part of a great class with Brian Reese and Derek Phelps and Clifford Rozier.
Yeah, that's right.
Pat Sullivan. And the year before, we had gotten George Litch. So that nucleus for us was really good. And Hubert Davis was on that team
That's
as
right.
well.
That's right.
Henrik Roeder was on that team. And Donald Williams was on that team. So those guys, you know, they were just a very cohesive unit that played together as well as any team I think that we've ever had in North Carolina. And we beat a really good Michigan team that had beat us early in the year in a tournament in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But but we beat them we beat Kansas in the semifinal game, and we beat Michigan the Fab Five in New Orleans for the championship game in 1993.
Talk about some memories. I remember Big E after that game walking around the hotel. That's when we had these camcorders, and he was recording the whole thing. I never forget him. Of course, I was going crazy up in the hotel. He was recording all the stuff. We're talking to the great Phil Ford, who was reflecting on Eric Montross, the passing of Eric Montross over the weekend, and such a sad situation. Coach, that's interesting. You talk about Big E because it's funny. You gave all those other players, and I just tell people not to make you blush or anything, but all those names that you threw out there, and then you were the point person recruiting all those guys. So tribute to you for bringing those guys in. And Big E, to your point, he's number one in the country. We had Michigan where his father went. He lived in Indianapolis at home. The Hoosiers were like 30 minutes, hour away. So that was great. So talk about. I know the bloody. He's been known for having his head bleeding after the Duke game. And people talk about that a lot. About he's been known for kind of bouncing back for that. I was at that Duke game in Chapel Hill. That was one of the wildest games I ever attended in Carolina. When playing Duke, and Carolina beat Duke and Christian Laettner. Talk about that game, Coach.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to comment. Thank you very much for the comments you gave me on recruiting. But you have to realize that no one ever came to Carolina because of Coach Smith. I mean, because of Phil Ford. They came here because of Coach Smith.
I know.
A recruiter can only do so much. If K-Mac had been the head coach at Carolina, I don't think those kids would have come.
We wouldn't have got back to those 20 wins. Not at all.
I was blue in the face.
First of all, Coach, you underestimate my powers of persuasion. Thank you very much.
But yeah, that was a really good game. I think were we 1-2 or 2-1 or something like that? I can't remember. And I mean, they had Laettner. They were loaded too, man. And it was just one of those. Every Carolina Duke game is just crazy. No matter how good either team is, but that team that year just happened to be both teams were really good, and it was very physical. And Big E got cut under his eye, and it was before you had all the blood stuff, and I remember him shooting a free throw, and blood was coming down on his face. But that was a battle out there, man. Seeing it up close, they were really going at it.
Wow, man. But he was incredible. It's just ironic that his parents and grandfather went to Michigan, and he ended up beating Michigan for the national championship.
Yeah.
That's really ironic that it happened that way. Yeah, so. But
I guess I wondered that those alumni those reunions
a little different.
I can imagine that. Yeah.
Outstanding. All right, Coach. Well, last question for me, man, before we let you get out of here. Just reflecting back on Big E. Real quickly. Well, it's not a question. I remember the first time I really got a chance to meet him. I was with you as always, and you know, I used to always laugh about how if you hang out with Phil, you become a great picture taker.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's true.
And I used to feel
especially the ACC tournament.
I used to feel some type of way. I'm like, I said, hey, ain't no damn admin. Stop asking me. Look, and I'm standing there one day. He's talking with Walt Williams and Big E standing there, and this lady comes up and she hands the camera to Big E and said, "Hey, can you take a picture with us?" I said, "Well, now I don't feel too bad." I said, if she gonna tell him,
take it right.
I said, look, I know they gonna tell me to take it.
Right.
So I thought that was probably the first time I really, me and E, we kind of laughed about it. I said, man, they got you taking pictures too. And he just laughed. He said, yeah. He said, that's what happened when you hanging around with this guy.
Yeah, good stuff.
Got to take a picture.
Yeah, so it's good, Phil. Man,
Thank
we
you,
appreciate
Coach,
you
man.
calling.
Appreciate you, man,
Thank
always.
you.
Good talking to you guys. See you guys later.
Yeah, take care.